Hi there, and welcome back to another tutorial. My name is Erin Eno, and today we're going to be looking at two different techniques that you can use to add shape and definition to your loose watercolor florals. So grab your paints and let's get started. Okay, so today I'm using Arches cold press watercolor paper, which is 100% cotton, 140 pound. I have my Van Gogh paints in my palette, a jar of water, paper towel handy, and today I am using my Princeton Snap in a size 12 round. Okay, so to start, I'm going to be doing a loose peony, a light kind of pinkish blush color, which that is not light, but I will get most of the pigment off of my brush. So we're just starting with a nice light wash. Okay, and we'll just do kind of just a round kind of fluffy-ish petal shape. That may even be a little too much pigment. Just gonna lighten that up a bit. Okay. And another one beside it. Okay, so they're just kind of free-formed petal shapes. Make sure you leave white space in the middle for the stamen. I don't even know if this has a stamen, if it's even called a stamen, but you know, the center of the flower. You get the idea. And to change the perspective, I'm going to make these petals a little shallower so it looks like it's kind of just tilted up a bit. Like so. Okay, and then while it's still wet, I'm going to go back in and get some of that deeper pigment and just tap it at the bottom of each petal. And maybe some at the top, just lightly, just a little bit, just to give it some shape at the outer edges. Now these petals here, I want them light at the edges if they're kind of almost curled up. So I don't want to go right to the edge on these guys. Okay. A little bit more on this one. And I'm not going to do the centers yet because I don't want them to bleed into the red too much. So we'll wait for that to dry a little bit. But that is our wet on wet using bleeds. And then I'm going to start a second. I said a peony, didn't I? I didn't do a peony, I did an anemone. I'm a little off today. So we'll do the same thing. Kind of some fluffy-ish misshapen petals. Not misshapen, but you know, not so contrived. Another one here. Making sure, again, to leave white space in the middle. Like so. Okay, so we'll let that dry before we come in and do the glazing or layering. So while that's drying, I'm going to go back to the first one, which I don't know, it's still a little wet. I'm not going to go in quite yet. I will start the peony that I said I was going to do. So the peony, let's do like a purplish color, simply because I have purple in this mixing well. Okay, and again, I'm going to get most of the pigment off my brush. We've got our main anchor petal here, and leaving white space between each petal. Do a big C curve here on this side. And they're all kind of meeting at the bottom where they're kind of blooming from. And we'll just do some at the back. Like so. And maybe some that have fallen down a bit, where the peony's opening up and blooming. So these are just very loose, rough flowers. Okay, and while it's wet, again, I'm going to go back in with more pigment, less water, and just tap at the base of some of these petals. It's going to be darkest at the point where they're coming out of, in here in the bottom. Okay, you can also put some at the top to get some shape, some of the back petals. Like so. And then some squiggles in the middle where there's some other petals that are about to bloom. Okay. And then I'm also going to go in, just get a little bit of yellow and tap that in at the center as well. Like so. This isn't bleeding as much as I would like. I'm just going to coax this one along. Okay. Alrighty. So this is still reasonably wet, so I'm going to go on to the base layer for the peony that we're going to do with layering. Okay, so again, just need a light wash. Our main center anchor petal, one beside that one, and a big C curve coming out of that side, and then again some more petals at the back. And then some petals that have kind of fallen again. Like so. Maybe one there. Okay. Then I'm also going to go in again with the dark and do some squiggles up here for the additional petals in the center. And then we'll just let that dry and we'll come back and do our glazing or layering on top, excuse me, layering on top of that one. So I think this guy up here, the anemone, is probably dry enough that I can go in and put some black in the center. I don't want too much water on my brush. Okay, and I'm just going to tap kind of a circle of dots, like so. And then you can also just drag up some kind of stamen shapes. This brush doesn't have the finest tip on it, so it's not ideal, but it's okay. And then a black dot in the middle. And that is our anemone using bleeds. So we'll go do our anemone, because that's pretty dry now, using the glazing. So with the same color, just again using just a light wash. You don't need it too dark, because just even another light layer on top of an existing layer is going to deepen it up. So we don't want to start too dark right out of the gate, okay? Put some of the edges of the petal. And you can rinse off your brush, tap it off on your paper towel, and just kind of blend these layers out as well, if that's the look you want. I want it kind of textured, so I don't want them too blended out. Okay, so this method is, we're using wet on dry as opposed to the bleeds, which is wet on wet. I don't want to bring the lines out on these two petals too much, because I want the edges to be to be lighter, almost as if the petals are curling up when we're looking at the underneath side. Okay, so basically you're just adding these layers and building depth with these layered strokes. So it just adds shape like you get from the bleeds, but because it's a little bit more deliberate, you're adding texture as well, which I kind of like. Sometimes the bleeds can, although they're nice, they don't add a lot of texture. So it's fun to do it this way every once in a while. Don't mind my neighbor's dog. She's a beautiful dog, but she barks at everything. So just remember, the key to this is not too much water on your brush. So you could even go down to a smaller brush if you want better water control. Okay. I'm just going to make it a little bit darker right towards the center. Like so. Okay, I don't want to get carried away, but that's it. And like I say, you can clean off your brush, dry it off from your paper towel, and even drag some of these up. Just make sure you're following the curve of the petal when you do this, okay? And I think I will just go in with an even darker tone. Maybe not that dark. But this carmine that I'm using is really, really highly pigmented. Okay, so I'm just going to tap a little bit of it off on my paper towel and just, well, maybe not that much. I probably should be waiting a little bit still a little damp. Okay, so now we'll head down to the Peony and get some layers on that one. Again, not too much water. And I'm going to start right at the center where, or right at the base here where it would be the darkest. And again, following the shape of the petals. I'm going to have some darkness at the top. And then before it dries, I'm just going to drag some of it down. And some of it up from the bottom. Just using light, fine strokes. You can even do some at the back, on the back petals, just to bring them out a bit. Like I say, I don't want to soften them up too much because I like the texture, but I'm just going to blend some of them out. Like so. And a little bit darker right towards the very, very base here. Just to give it some more depth. And maybe some more in the squigglies at the top. So I think I'll leave that as is. It's got a decent amount of texture to it, and I'm going to go put the yellow in the center. Try not to disturb too much of the purple underneath because yellow and purple will just give you a muddy brown. Already it's going a little muddy, but that's okay. I just don't want to overwork it. So then back to the anemone, I'm going to go back with this deeper color now that it's dry and just kind of, that's too much water, sorry. Just add some more contrast and depth with the deeper pigment. And I can actually put some, bring this petal in a bit. Okay, I might have come in a little bit too much there. I didn't leave a lot of room for the stamen, but we'll see how this goes. So I'm just going to tap the circled, or tap dots all around. And they are going to bleed a bit because I had a little bit, came in a little bit too close on that. So I'm going to put a solid black dot in the middle. Okay, and then we're going to come up with those. Whoops. I should have waited a little longer, but you get the idea. I'm going to try to deepen up this black in here just a little bit. It bled out more than I wanted and has faded the black, so we're just going to tap in there a little bit more. Okay, so there are examples of 2 ways that you can add shape and definition to your loose watercolor florals. You can see with the bleed method, you get a much smoother transition from light to dark. And with the layering / glazing method, it's much more intentional, has more contrast. And I actually kind of like this method because it gives your flowers more texture. So I'm probably going to start incorporating this method a little more in the future. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And if you want to see more beginner-friendly tutorials, please make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell to know when I have new videos out. Also, as always, if you're on Instagram and you try any of my tutorials, please share your work and tag me so I can take a look. That's it for today, guys. Take care, and I will see you in the next one.